to the WACE News broadcasting from our studio at Augusta Circle Elementary School. Today we have a very special guest who is here to have a conversation about the importance of public education. He is the former United States Secretary, Richard Riley.
Yes, most people know him as Governor Riley because he used to be the governor of South Carolina. Another fact that makes Secretary Riley special to our school is that all of his children and 3 of his 13 grandchildren have gone to Augusta Circle.
With him today is a very special reporter, Mr. Chuck Sailors, chairman of the Greenville County School Board. Mr. Sailors will ask our guests some questions. Let's join them in the media center. Mr. Sailors?
Mr. Secretary, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here to Augusta Circle today. I understand that you and your wife were very active here as PTA leaders and volunteers. All of your children came to school here, and this is one of the shining examples of what's really good in public education. And so on behalf of the National Federation of Urban and Suburban School Districts, we want to thank you for you taking the time to have this brief conversation.
Well, and I thank you very much, and it's great to be here at Augusta Circle. You're right, all 4 of my children went through school here. We lived near here. I grew up near here. Augusta Circle was smaller then. My wife was involved in passing a petition to keep Augusta Circle here because we had so many families with young children that were coming along.
Yes, sir.
And the school district was talking about closing the school and moving it outside the city. So she was an activist for quality schools, and fortunately they kept it here, and it's one of the finest elementary schools in the country.
Yes, sir.
And I'm very proud of Augusta Circle.
Well, in following up on that, what do you see as some of the biggest challenges that we face today in education?
Well, first of all, resources are limited, as we all know. I mean, that's in every area of government or whatever. And so there's a constant strain on schools because of limited resources. At the same time that you have limited resources, you have more students every year just about, especially in urban and suburban districts. They have more and more students come in. Schools then have a lot of different kinds of things they have to do. They have to deal with the whole child. They have things that have developed over the years that they have to work with. They have public schools, as we know, have all children, brilliant children, average children, children who are struggling. So here you are with limited resources, more students, limited English in some children. English is a second language. So you have all these kinds of additional strains on the system, and then you have limited resources. Plus, we have a constant effort to increase the quality of schools, to raise standards, to learn more. Education is part of knowledge, and knowledge is growing exponentially every year. So there's more and more knowledge out there. So we have all these complications and limited resources. So it's very important for us to work together to try to get the most out of the resources that we have.
Going back to the days when I served as National PTA President a few years ago, and I want to thank you for your support back at that time too. We as a parent group were involved in the initial conversations around Common Core and worked with the Governors Association, the state school chiefs, to develop ideas that are now Common Core standards. What are your thoughts about Common Core?
Well, I strongly support Common Core standards. South Carolina is one of the states that has adopted Common Core, and there's still some stirring around about that, but we are one of the, I think, 46 states. It didn't come from the federal government. You know, I've always been for standards, and I was for South Carolina having standards way back before everybody was talking about standards. And when I went with Bill Clinton in 1993, our whole 8 years we worked on having all states develop standards, what a child should know in the 3rd grade and then be able to do. in math, and then the same in history and whatever. Standards are necessary in order to keep progress going. What do you measure it by? So I'm a standards person. All the states had different standards, and of course then that was a real mix-up. South Carolina had high standards. Some states had very low standards, and it really was hard to compare them. Kids were moving all around all the time from state to state. So Common Core, then the states came together, not the federal government. States came together and said, why don't we develop high standards, less standards, smaller things to look at and not big, long paragraphs, clear, and then let's all agree to those. These are basic standards, and then have all the states have the same standards, high standards that will make a difference. That does not affect teachers the way they teach those standards. I mean, if you have to have a certain level for, say, geometry in the 5th grade, and a teacher is teaching to those standards, it's up to the teacher and the school as to how that's taught. But the standard is those children in the 5th grade are supposed to learn this high standard about geometry. Now, I think that makes a whole lot of sense. It's in effect now. Working towards it, it's going to mean a lot of major changes because higher standards are going to be out there. They're out there now. And I frankly think it's improving education, and it's going to improve it a whole lot more in the future, in my judgment.
A sidebar question related to your comment a minute ago about President Clinton. You served in the Clinton administration for the full 8 years. Did anyone else, I mean, you were pretty much one of the most senior members of his administration and the longest in duration, am I correct?
Well, yes, and we had, I think Donna Shalala at Help was another one. But I was there the whole 8 years, and before that I was head of transition for Bill Clinton. When he got elected, he asked me to come in and help him put together staff, the federal government staff in Washington, and not just, I was not involved in education then, but in all of his areas of government. So I was involved 2 or 3 months really before he chose me as Secretary of Education. But it was a long time, and it was good. And I had a good relationship with the president, and that's a big difference. And I think Arnie Duncan now, the current secretary, has a good relationship with President Obama. And I think that's good, to be able to talk education and have respect for each other back and forth.
Very much so. Let's talk for a minute about technology in the classroom. That seems to be a big conversation piece with superintendents, with school board members, with teachers. I know here in Greenville County we have been piloting a program for one-to-one technology where children in our identified classrooms are going to be receiving and using iPads. What are your thoughts about technology in the classroom and what we need to do to get that in a greater presence?
Well, technology, of course we could talk about that all day long. It's amazing as to what it's done to change education, and it's changed everything. I mean, the internet is just amazing what changes it has brought about. When I was secretary, Bill Clinton and I worked closely with the Congress to try to develop some method of connecting all public schools and libraries to the internet. That was the very beginning when we were just beginning to talk about technology and how important it was for education. And we got that passed. It's called the E-rate. And the E-rate is not a tax on people, but it's a rate that goes on their utilities all across the country. That money then goes, first of all, to connect the school and the classrooms to the internet. Once that's done, then that same additional money every year goes to the school to enhance education, to bring on online courses, to really make the school and education system more into technology and using it properly and in a good way. So those things are underway. We've made enormous strides in technology use. As we well know, we've gone from the computer to the laptop to iPads and smartphones and smart boards and the whole deal. So lots is out there. Teachers now are really working hard, and students and parents, to really understand how to use all of that properly. It's amazing how much a teacher can use those different online available courses, usually paid for by the federal government, the state government, or whatever. Then you have things like the Discovery Channel and really educational things out there. So it really then is a new load on teachers to figure out how we can best use technology. And one of the most important advantages of it is one thing that's very clear. And we talk, and I know the Federation talking about what works best. One thing that works well is one-on-one education. That's very expensive and very complicated. You can do that with technology. So Greenville School District, as you point out, then has efforts to have what we call formative assessment. That is assessing all the time, the teacher with a computer, the students with computers. The teacher can communicate with a student by computer. Once you get into that and learning in that way, you don't have to wait till the end of the month or the end of the course to test them. They're tested all the time, all during the day. And that's this computer adaptive formative assessment is really important. And Greenville is getting into that in the right good way, and I like to see that. It's complicated in the beginning. You have to learn how to teach differently in some ways, the same way in a lot of ways, but you can have that individual connection with the student.
Well, it's not exactly a inexpensive proposition to facilitate, but I certainly look forward to, as a school board trustee, the challenge of getting our students to a place where every child in our county, every child in our state, and even our nation at one point in time can have better access to technology.
Yeah, me too.
You have been said by many to be one of the most dedicated, honorable public servants that this country's ever seen. And I would agree with that wholeheartedly. You have really set a bar for public servants to be a true statesman, to serve and represent the people that elected you and appointed you with distinguished honor. So your term as governor was very admirable. As a student, and you're one of the people that got me involved in the public service arena.
Well,
But as Secretary of Education, what could you say would be one of your most memorable moments during those 8 years of service?
well, and I thank you what you said, and that makes me feel very good, but we still have a lot of work to do, as you well know. When I think of memorable moments, of course, you have all the involvement in the White House in Washington and all around the world, and really I traveled with the president a lot because he was into education, and he spoke oftentimes in a school or a college, community college or whatever, and he always took me with him, and we worked on speeches together and that kind of thing. And that was always exciting, to get on Air Force One and sitting there with the president working on the speech that he's going out and making in Minneapolis or whatever. So I enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the relationship I had with the president. When I think about, and of course as governor, you have a lot of responsibility, small state, you can see things happening, and that really is good, and you connect up with that. But when you get in Washington, in the Department of Education, and you're sitting around with 8 or 10 people, I always had a teacher in the room, by the way, quality teacher in the room. You got to be careful about all of us policy makers out here and not bringing in teachers and principals and superintendents. And I always had those folks around, and good ones. And to be making a decision that would impact 50 million children. I mean, it's overwhelming when you think about it. And I used to carry that with me every night. Here I am, South Carolina, Washington, making decisions that impact every one of the children in this country. That is an overwhelming experience and one that I'll never forget.
As we conclude this time together, you're familiar with the National Federation. You mentioned earlier that, of course, you knew Dr. Hall, you knew Dr. Bell. Is there any points of wisdom that you would like to share with the members of the Federation, whether they're a school board trustee or a superintendent or a member of a support staff? Is there anything you could share with them that will be something they can take home with them to use in their professional?
Well, first of all, I'm glad they're here in Greenville.
Yes, sir.
Greenville's a special place. South Carolina's special. Augusta Circle Elementary School is special, and you're special, and I'm glad you're here. But if I had to say something to this group that you have coming here, the first thing that I would say is I talk about all the complications with higher standards, with more students, with limited resources, with technology, Common Core, all of those things here. You have the important issues dealing with disabled children, children with learning disabilities. All of these things put on the schools in a good way, but a difficult way and complicated. So the important thing, I think, that those of us who deal with school policy, superintendents, school district leaders of all kinds, school board members, principals, whatever, it's important for us to come together, talk about these issues, talk about how best to use technology, talk about limited English students, how we best how we deal with disabled children more, all of those things to share ideas of what's working. We hear about that a lot, what's working. That doesn't sound like a very heavy statement to me because I hear it so much, but I tell you it's very important for all of us to share with each other what is working best in my school, and I might have an idea that you other superintendents and school board members can take back to your school and your district. So I thank you all for being here, and I thank you for what you're doing to improve public education.
I want to take this opportunity on behalf of Greenville County Schools, Secretary Riley, the staff here at Augusta Circle, the students, for you being with us. Certainly hope that your time here in the Greenville community is time well spent. And on behalf of the National Federation of Suburban School Districts, Mr. Secretary, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, sir. My pleasure. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thank you again.
We would also like to tell our guests from the Federation how happy we are to have you here in Greenville. We hope you've enjoyed your visit.
This is Ava Kitchen.
And this is John Habig signing off.
Have a great day.